Hey team, welcome back to the show. Today we have the whole crew here, Danny, Jeremiah, Ismail, and Andrea, doing a deep dive into the leg press, which is one of my personal favorite movements for lower body development. I think we all probably have that in common. Before we get into it, let's just run through some quick personal updates with all of our uber just crazy exciting lives. Most exciting life starts first. Andrea, what's going on with you?
Nothing. Uh, really nothing. I haven't. My nutrition hasn't changed since last time we updated. My training hasn't changed. I've been feeling. I've been feeling like I'm just dragging myself to the gym, and um, for the most part, progression's been okay up until this week, and then it started to come back down. So I'm getting some labs. I hadn't gotten any labs done since the competitions. So I've been eating at or above maintenance for a good while at this point, so it'll be interesting to see how things are looking.
You're kind of past that initial honeymoon period where food comes up and it's like, holy shit, I feel incredible. I'm making crazy gains. Okay.
Yeah, I guess so. It screeched to a halt this week. And also, um, I'm like just starting to get out of this 6 week long cold that I've had.
I was gonna
So you would
say,
think I would start to feel better. Like I finally am recognizing my normal voice coming back. You would think
hmm
I'd start to feel better in the gym, but it's like headed in the wrong direction. So, anyways.
that's unfortunate. Okay. Curious to see how that plays out. Yeah, I'm surprised that your training hasn't taken more of a hit sooner, given how long you have been sick.
Yeah.
But I'll be excited to have your normal voice back on the podcast at least. Um, Danny, anything new in terms of contest prep? How goes life in general?
Oh, it's going. I'm about 11 weeks out. So food is slowly but surely coming down. And I'm in like a final week of my training program. So yeah, progress is slow. Progress is like it's like a rep here. Maybe let's just try and match reps from last week and um, yeah, but it's a bit of a grind this week. So I'm looking forward to a new program. But yeah, I've got my check in with my coach later this evening, and reached out to my posing coach again, and so gonna get that going again.
Hell yeah. You're strong, dude. When I watch your stories, I'm like, damn, you can move a lot of weight, and then I forget like the whole powerlifting thing and like the like world champion powerlifting thing. I'm like, okay, well, adds up, yes, but I'm always like, damn, she's moving some pretty good weight there, and you're still progressing. It sounds like just slowly.
Yeah, it's like 5 pounds here, 5 pounds there, or 2.5. But yeah, upper body is obviously a little slower. But yeah, deadlifts, RDLs, all that stuff was my jam, was my favorite, and so I get excited and it makes me feel like a power lifter again. And like, do I ever want to go back to that? Possibly, I don't know, but
Yeah.
we're in this bodybuilding now era.
Okay. Okay. What's your food at right now?
About 2,200 calories.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah,
And you just meal plan out all the time, right?
yeah, it's like
Okay.
very, very regimented. It's the same thing every day. I don't actually have like a training day. Well, I'm training 6 days a week, so I don't get like training day food or whatever. We'll plan refeeds closer to show, obviously as food comes down, but that'll be kind of based on how I'm feeling, how I'm looking. But yeah.
When you're like in the throes of prep, just really digging, what does a low intake look like for you, just calorie wise?
Um, it's interesting. It's like I think the lowest we got last prep was maybe 1,200 calories.
Okay.
Um, which is wild to because like I've had preps before where we've had to like go lower, and it's been like
Yeah.
iceberg lettuce and chicken breast on repeat, and that was it. And that was like your digestion's a mess, and you're just like, oh my god, doing an hour and a half of cardio a day, and yeah, it was grim. I'm glad that I don't have to push that hard anymore.
hmm
Um, well, I haven't recently, so we'll see what happens this
Okay.
prep.
And you said you're at 2,200 right now, so I mean, shit, you could still pull 1,000 calories in the next 11 weeks. So, all right,
Oh, yep. it's gonna
cool.
it's gonna be a ride this prep.
I'm excited to see it play out. Natalie, anything new with you? How's that Sprite?
I finally found the Sprite Zero Sugar plus tea. It's like an Arnold Palmer. That's my most exciting update. It is good. I'm a fan.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, uh, similar to Coach Andrea, I have been really dragging. It just recovery totally tanked. Like nothing was helping, sort of thing. For those that may not know, I've been dieting pretty much all summer, and it hasn't felt that hard, practically speaking. Like I just wake up and do everything I need to do. But just gradually over the last week, it was just feeling like worse and worse. Like I don't really get sore that much anymore, but like my legs were still sore from like last Wednesday's training. So like for me to be sore at all, let alone a full week later, is strange. Um, and just kind of like, yeah, a lot of areas I was just kind of dragging, and checked in with my coach, and he just fed me up and was like, here's like 3 consecutive high days. So more food, and then he's like, do what feels right in the gym. Like, I trust you. So did some upper body Tuesday, and like basically did like one set of everything. Um, Basically, I did my warm up, and I did my first set, and after that first set, I was like, that felt kind of hard, like not in a great way. I was like, right, one set it is. um, and then I didn't train legs yesterday, and like probably do a hike or something tomorrow, and I'm back down to some low days, which, I mean, hunger's not really a problem, so that's not a big deal. But it'll be interesting to see how things feel kind of on the weekend. But that's my biggest update. So just kind of had to pull back a bit.
Okay. Natalie and Andrea are down pretty bad, it sounds like, this week.
Down
But
bad.
hopefully things turn around for you two over the next couple weeks. Um, Unlike y'all, I've been feeling great. Training's been going super well. Feel good. I think I said this in Slack. The Metroflex, Natalie, you and I went there, like the one. Dude who owns Muscle Factory took that over. And so, like, they're just pretty sick equipment there now. So I've started taking a couple of my sessions per week there just since it's like so much closer. Saves me like 40 minutes every time I go to the gym. But yeah, outside of that, I don't really have a whole lot else to update. Let's talk about leg presses. Um, so first, in terms of why the leg press is such a great movement, are we all in agreement that leg press is probably like a staple for most of our lower body programs we put together? Right? It's just very stable, highly loadable lower body hypertrophy work. Very good output movement, right? So we think of like a contralateral B stance RDL, for example. Great movement for hypertrophy, but there's a very large skill element we have to figure out. And that's true for all movements to a degree, but the beauty of something like a leg press is we can get someone to the point where they're just able to really load the quads, glutes extremely well and just push hard very quickly because there's not a huge skill component there. It's essentially push your feet here, hit an adequate depth, and just push really hard, right? And we can just shut your brain off and push. So again, we can get a lot of output quite quickly. It's again kind of like a sledgehammer with our lower body training where it's just super easy to get a good stimulus quite quickly with it. And again, execute it well without a big learning curve. Also very good kind of omni or almost like all encompassing, at least for glutes and quads movement, where again, we can get like a good amount of both. So for that reason, it's really a staple. I will say like a lot of clients, if we don't have a good like hack squat or pendulum pattern, or even if I'm like, because I'm almost always going to have like a squat pattern, oftentimes a bilateral squat pattern in both lower body days if someone's training lower twice a week. If we don't have a good like hack or pendulum, or that doesn't necessarily make sense for the goal. A lot of times I will have someone just leg pressing twice a week. It's not uncommon. So yeah, very, very important movement within like my programs, a lot of ours. Anything else y'all want to add in terms of why you guys are fans of leg presses? Everybody good? Cool.
It's usually easier to find, even though there are bad machines, it's
That's
usually
another
easier to
good point.
find. Yeah, it's usually easier to find versus like a good hack squat machine or a good pendulum. Um, and we can make it, if we have to, we can make it a little bit more,
It's easier to adjust.
yeah, adjustable, glute dominant, quad dominant, whatever we need whenever we don't have the other stuff available.
Were you gonna add something, Danny?
Yeah, I was just gonna add like there's not that much like systemic fatigue as well involved in the leg press when you compare it to something like a pendulum squat or a barbell squat or a goblet squat, right? Everything's very locked in and it's just very isolated with in the lower body.
Yeah, yeah. Killer movement. Okay, so problem being, when we're looking at why do we even need to do a deep dive on this? Like most movements, most people don't know how to execute it correctly. Very common to see someone is not using the proper range of motion. We're either going too deep or too shallow. We're using the wrong stance, and they just end up hurting their hips or their knees rather than building glutes or quads. Uh, Again, because it's such a common movement in programming, it's very commonly something that we're troubleshooting. Even though it is simple, there's still oftentimes a lot of things to address to really help someone get the most out of it. So today, I just want to dig into how to finally fix your leg press, avoid any knee pain, hip pain, and really build your glutes and quads. All right, so first, let's just dig into a high-level breakdown. A leg press is essentially just a squat pattern. More stable, very stable squat pattern. So again, it's going to train our glutes well. It's going to train our quads well. We're also going to get a good amount of adductors in there. So again, really all the largest tissues in the lower body, minus hamstrings, are going to be trained quite well with a leg press. Anything else y'all want to add in terms of like, hey, here's what we get out of the leg press? It's really pretty simple. All right, so let's dig into some mistakes. First one being initial setup. When we're looking at stance width for a leg press, I'll just go left here. Andrea, what are you looking for in terms of like, hey, where do we want to put our feet? How do we want to position things? And then everybody else, you can jump in whenever.
So for a glute dominant leg press, we're going with hip width stance, so it's a little bit closer than the other, just more, I guess you'd say omni leg press positions. Otherwise, what I tend to have people do is just outside, like closer to shoulder width stance. And then within that, like there's a little bit of play either direction and just go with what allows you the best range of motion.
Yeah. I don't even differentiate honestly a whole lot between like glute and quad. Like I wouldn't necessarily go like wider for a quad press than a glute press. Basically wider, I think it just gets people in adductors a bit more and cuts range of motion and short.
I'm not talking about super high and wide, but hip stance is pretty tight. Hip stance is pretty close. Like for some people, if they have good ankle mobility and the machine is set up to where they get really deep knee flexion, it can kind of run into your body a little bit. Like just the difference in hip width and shoulder width, I've seen some people can get a little bit better range of motion, a little bit better movement.
Okay. I'll have to. Cool. Okay. I'll agree to disagree with you there. Anything else in terms of a stance width y'all want to add?
I think it is determined for me by the individual in combination with the machine they have available. It's just really highly individual. I have to see it on the person. Something that I don't want is for my people to start like second guessing everything. I think we get a lot of clients who are pretty well versed in some of this stuff, and so they want to know exactly like where do you want my feet, and like I know that this is supposed to be glute bias and this is supposed to be quad bias, and usually I just assign them a leg press. Like if they're a new client, I'm just like, hey, just get in there and show me what you got, and then we kind of adjust from there, because I can't tell ahead of time. Like I don't always know what machine you have access to. I don't know how you're gonna look. And even if I do know that someone has like really long femurs or really poor dorsiflexion, that doesn't necessarily indicate to me, like I'm not going to know how you're going to move through the hip until you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So my roundabout answer is just it really depends for each person.
Yeah, I normally just say somewhere between hip and shoulder width, and then when I see how they move, hey, maybe let's take this a little bit narrower, a little bit wider based on what it looks like you need. Cool.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I want to kind of see them move through that range of motion and kind of see, okay, how deep can we get while maintaining like total foot pressure,
Hmm.
that tripod pressure without like heel. Like a lot of the time I see, without getting into this too much, because I know we're going to talk about it further, but without like
This
heels
is
lifting
actually my
off and
next point,
stuff.
so that's perfect.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
want to make sure that their hips stay down, that they're pulling themselves into the seat, that foot pressure stays on without lifting off. Just because I've worked with a lot of people who have very poor ankle mobility, and so that becomes an issue. So then that means that I would then adjust the foot positioning based off of that, potentially to see, okay, how can we get the most out of uh, this exercise for that person.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you touched on something there. Let's dig into that a little bit more when it comes to maintaining heel pressure. Why don't we want someone's heels coming up off the platform?
Well, that's not stable. But also then it means that, okay, then then something else is pulling, and is too tight, whether it's through the ankle, poor ankle mobility, or tight calves. But then it's also just not stable, because then you're putting pressure on the ankle joint rather than just kind of isolating the um, quads and glutes.
Yeah, yeah, really like and for a lot of times it'll manifest to people having some knee issues with it as well. Like we talked about this a lot where very often if someone has knee pain in their squat patterns, they just suck at keeping heel pressure. We'll see them like come up on their toes a lot when they're squatting or leg pressing. And it is often an easy fix. Again, it's like more range of motion. It'll typically allow you to get more knee flexion, but it's that we're also weaker, or especially if it's like we're at the bottom of the leg press, our heels come up. Suddenly we're less stable through the foot, which means upstream we're a lot less stable at the knee, in the position where we also have the greatest torque on the knee. So like it adds up why we would oftentimes get some pain there, and we'll just get it better. Again, we'll be stronger. We'll be able to produce more force if we're able to maintain that heel pressure. So yeah, typically when we're looking at like how high or low do we want our feet to be on the platform, um, generally, like, hey, if we're biasing quads or as a whole, like just a more balanced leg press, probably like we want to make sure we're not going too far in the low range to where we can't keep the heels in contact. Now, when we're looking at like that, like how high or low we want to go on the platform, Andrea, do you differentiate there between like quad press, glute press? Do you typically just say like, what's the position that allows us the most total range of motion?
It depends on the person. Of course, if somebody is getting hyper specific, which is not very common, and we're trying to grow glutes without as much quad volume, I'll use a
Hmm.
glute focus press. But beyond that specific type of person, a lot of times I'm starting out with just a typical regular leg press, and then I might adjust it just based on how they're moving. Mostly because the demo video will show them either higher or lower foot placement, and that just ends up for them, for their body and their machine, it ends up where they're able to get the most range of motion.
Hmm. Okay, perfect. Anything else in terms of our foot placement y'all want to add? What about like, hey, feet straight forward, feet rotated out? Natalie, do you have any cues on that, or does it matter?
Depends. I think we're gonna talk about knees tracking over toes. So
Hmm.
that's something I would kind of clue into. It's like if the knees and the toes are not aligned, that then I might like cue a little more specifically with the feet.
Yeah.
A lot of times people turn their feet out to accommodate like a lack of ankle or hip rom, so
Hmm.
that's a thing too. But again, we're not looking necessarily at that in isolation. Like we have to see how the hips are moving too before I can appropriately say like this is where your feet need to be. um,
Okay.
for my I mean my like pendulum squat, for example, like my feet are actually at my leg press, my toes are pointing like straight forward,
Hmm.
like no external rotation. and my ankles just like are not capable of like a very deep ROM. So it's like I don't need to make room for my hips, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you mentioned knees tracking over toes. Can you fill us in on like what you mean there and what the importance of that is?
So in the example that we were just talking about, if you have your feet planted on the platform of the leg press and your toes are like pointing out, but your knees are still tracking straight forward, like that is an incongruency there. So we're gonna have a lot of torque at the knee. That is just not gonna feel good, and even if it doesn't feel bad, it will over time. I promise.
Yeah,
Similarly,
see
like
that?
we don't necessarily want our toes like straight and then our knees like caving in. So you want to keep them in line. There aren't many movements I can think of like across upper and lower body and like all equipment. I mean, I hate making blanket statements, but like there aren't many scenarios where it's like we don't want to line things up nicely.
Yeah.
As a very general statement.
Yeah. I like the analogy of like your knee more or less working like a hinge, right? We can't rotate a whole lot through the knee. So then when we have like we're not lining things up well with tracking over the toes, there's a lot more of a rotational force that can be applied there, and we get some pain at that point. Yeah, again, like if you look, that's like a lot of times when someone's having knee pain with their leg press, I'll have them, hey, send me a video from like behind you, like over your shoulder, so I can actually see how things are lining up. And you'll see like feet are pointed way outwards, and then our knees are pointed like straight forwards, and it's like, okay, we can easily see here again, just like why this would be painful. Um, Another very common when we're talking initial setup mistakes, very common one is just not using the handles, which is so simple but so huge. Just pull yourself down to the seat, grip those handles tight. Otherwise, the leg press will kind of be pushing you up in the seat. Don't, as you're getting close to failure, don't take your hands off the handles and try to push your legs up. We immediately get weaker, we're less stable there. Keep yourself locked in. Anything else y'all can think of in terms of initial setup mistakes before we talk about execution?
A note about the handles. I always like to say, like, this is one of the. I think this will probably lead into another point, but like, actually, I don't know if it's on here, so I'm gonna add this. But one of the things we typically see is the pelvis tucking under, right, or like rotation at the pelvis. Am I missing that? Is that on here?
No, you're good.
Okay, so this is a good segue because we're talking about handles, right? So a lot of times we'll see like people trying to. It kind of ties into like go, going for too much range of motion that you might not have access to, and so you see like the pelvis rotating like or tucking under, like kind of the butt is like coming out of the seat away from the pad. So using those handles to really pull yourself down into the seat helps with that. And then it ultimately also helps just with like greater force production. It's like the more force that we're putting like into the handles, like pulling ourselves in, the greater force output we have. And at the end of the day, the more force output we have, the more mechanical tension we're putting our muscles under, thus greater hypertrophy outcomes, ideally.
The more jacked we get. I love
Basically.
it. Okay. Which carries us over very well, segues us very well, as Natalie would say, into our execution mistakes. We already touched on a few: heel pressure, knees not tracking over the first few toes well. I would say going for too much range of motion and going too quickly through the eccentric, the lowering portion of the rep often go hand in hand. You see people just drop in, like just no control on our eccentric at all. And I don't want to like overthink this. Like it doesn't need to be like a 5 second negative on each rep. But so many people just plummet down into that. It like pushes you outside of your active range of motion. We'll see like pelvis round way up, and then they kind of just launch it back up from the bottom. Where again, we're not getting a lot of tension there. We're putting a lot more stress on tendons, ligaments, less tension on glutes, quads when we're pressing like that. Andrea, was there something you wanted to add? I saw you unmuted yourself. Maybe not.
No, I've stayed
Cool.
unmuted. I'm living on the edge with Max back here behind me.
Okay. Okay. So would y'all say then when we're looking at the bottom of your range of motion, like where should we stop at the bottom of the rep? Client asks you that question. Where should I stop at the bottom of the rep? How do I know I'm at the bottom? How do you answer?
Basically, that point before your pelvis starts to move. So we want a stable pelvis. And so if there's any movement there. Like movement at the pelvis is pretty unnecessary for a leg press. You want to keep that stable.
Yeah. So basically, it'll start to feel like your like lower back, right where it means your butt is like about to round up off the pad. That should typically be our stopping point. Again, people like generally think like more range of motion is always better, but it's just forced. Like if the leg press is the sled is just. I like to like when I see a client doing this often, I'll like get up and like stand up on my loom and show them like, okay, imagine I'm going through a barbell back squat. I can squat the bar down and control it well until about this point. And then I'll show them me just like passively dropping down further where like I get a lot of butt wink and my like lower spine really rounds. Like, okay, I wouldn't barbell back squat into this range, right? I'm not, this is like outside of my active range of motion into more passive range of motion I'm being forced into. Same with the leg press. We want to stay within that more active range of motion we can control to really keep tension on the target tissues here. Uh, um, I would say another big one with the leg press is just pausing a little bit too long at the top of the reps. Not that I'm necessarily opposed to like a bit of a pause, but people easily turn it into like, dude, we're pausing like 5, 6 seconds at the top of each rep for like 8, 10 reps. I had one client for she just wrapped up a few months ago, and she would grind through some sets, but I was like, dude, every one would be like her pendulums, her leg presses would be like for like 10, 12 reps she would pause for like 5, 6 seconds at the top, and it'd be like 3 minute videos of these sets she would send me because I was like, dude, you're just making this so much harder for yourself than you need to be. Just like, don't pause for so long at the top. Get back into it quicker. We'll hit failure quicker, and we won't have to do this like marathon set to achieve the RIR target. So again, like a few brief pauses, all good, but I would limit it to like the last couple reps if at all possible, 3 to 5 seconds. Try not to go too crazy with it. Do you have something to add there, Danny?
It's kind of a rest. That lockout.
It is.
It's kind of a rest. So I actually don't like clients doing that. I do try and emphasize that, that lowering phase and that pause, that's all increasing time under tension, which is another method of, tracking progressive overload, right? If we increase the time under tension, if we increase the time of the eccentric and the pauses and stuff, that's also with the same weight. Obviously, it's a lot harder if we slow that down. But also, I actually discourage clients from locking out at the top. You do get the odd client that's like hyper flexible, and so that lockout, I'm like, oh, it just makes me cringe, like looking at the knees and stuff.
Everybody
it's like,
knows the video that just plays in your head.
Yes.
Girl hyperextending her legs on. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like I'm like, just maintain like make it a soft, like maintain like a soft bend at the top almost. That way we can maintain that time under tension. Actually makes the exercise a lot harder in some ways.
Yeah, you'll get if you're pausing too long at the top again, it seems beneficial because we can maybe do more reps, but really you'll like get a better stimulus out of it if we are moving through it a bit more fluidly. And it also makes it harder to measure, are we actually progressing or are we just resting longer at the top between reps? Like are we consistently just resting longer between reps week to week? Anything else? Oh, I guess another good one would be, how do we know if we're going low enough?
Send me a training video. If we're not, yeah. I don't know if I like have a like, this is how you know. But like a lot of times we'll see that with like people whose feet are like way too high on the platform. It's like we're not getting really any knee flexion. Or you'll see like, this is not specific to the leg press, but you'll see like as the set progresses and things are getting progressively harder towards the end of the set, all of a sudden range of motion like shortens up a little bit. It's like, hey, like these are now not the same reps that they were at the beginning of the set. So that's something I look out for. And then I work with my clients individually, and I know, like, just by looking at their video when they've got a little bit more on the table with range of motion, and I'll just cue them, be like, hey, I think we can go a little bit lower here.
Yeah.
Sometimes it will look like there's more left for them with the range of motion, so I'll have them send me a video with an empty leg press sled. and say go for your maximum range of motion. And if that's different versus the video of it loaded up, then they're not going low enough in their straight sets or in their
Yeah.
top sets.
No, I have a bunch of those as well where I'll like reference that back and send a screenshot of like the range of motion there versus the range of motion we achieved here. I find just in general, it is very, very rare. Again, it will be dependent on like someone's limb lengths, their mobility, but it's quite rare that someone can at least get to the point where we have like a 90 degree, a right angle between shin and thigh at the bottom of the rep. If we're cutting it off above that, that's where I am, like just like you said, Andrea, like, hey, just a sled, show me how much range of motion you can get before your lower back actually starts to round up off the pad. Because I do often find like it is easy to, because the leg press is so loadable and it's fun to be able to like continually progress it. People can often get into the trap of like, hey, I'm stacking on like another 25 each side, which if you're actually progressing sick, but oftentimes it's just our range of motion is getting shorter. Um, so something to hold yourself accountable to there. Any other main execution mistakes y'all see with the leg press that we haven't touched on?
What about back pad position?
Take it away. That's a good one.
I typically will just, if it doesn't look quite right, like it's limiting their range of motion because of, like they have more hip flexion available, I'll have them lower it back. But that's one where I don't have a specific angle that I am able to give somebody. We kind of have to play around with it. So I'm curious what you guys' process is.
My general rule is like I want you to put the seat as far back as it can go, and the exception that I would say would be the short individuals. So typically like short females, because they just aren't tall enough with long enough legs to like utilize that kind of position. So that's a scenario where like I would have sometimes they need to move the seat all the way up, like just to be able to like fit into the machine effectively. But for most other people, I can't think of a time that I've like had them move it up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dan.
I would agree with that. So I think sometimes I work with a lot of clients, like their default is to like have it all the way up.
Yeah.
And I'm like that the range of motion looks
I
looks
know
too
where that
short. Like
comes from though.
there's no room
I
there.
think a lot of people are like, but I feel it more here. So it's like that's that sensation chaser. Like
Yeah.
think about like a hip press versus a leg press, like and the
Yeah.
sensations that you get. I think that's where most people's minds are. It's like, but I connect really well and I feel it, and it's like, okay, well, that's one of those where like sensation doesn't necessarily equal better, you
Yeah.
know, or more effective.
And then also, it's just kind of like just move it, just try moving it back like one or two pins, just to give yourself a little bit more range of motion, just a little bit more move, like space to move, basically.
Yeah, the higher up the back pad is, the greater degree of relative hip flexion you'll be starting in. So basically, we have more bend at the hips. So that can become a limiter because since we're starting in more hip flexion already, we can't get as much movement of the hips before we run out of movement there. And then we have to stop the rep and go back up. So that can be the limiter for us getting more movement at the knee, more knee flexion as well. So it can, like, as a whole, just the total range of motion we go through can be reduced. Yeah, so generally, like, if it's just like a standard hammer strength leg press, it will be like lean this back more and more. I'll say like the Nebula or Arsenal
Yeah.
one, that's what I was gonna say. Yeah, like I don't lean it back all the way on that, where that one is you can lean it back so much, especially like the Nebula, the angle of it. It's almost like it's pushing you up out of the pad.
That's what I was
Uh,
thinking too, because we have the Arsenal and I feel like I'm sliding.
I can get a bit more knee flexion there, and this is again like the counterpoint to that with like most clients is like, yes, I can get a bit more deflection there, but my overall bracing like ability to stay in and like push the loading on one is a little bit worse versus if I have it like the second notch up from the bottom when I use the Arsenal or the Nebula. Cool. Agreed. Anything else on that? Or even like, I mean, manipulating positioning, like if someone struggles to get the knee flexion we want, if it's like, hey, this leg press would benefit from the platform, like going a bit lower, you can like have someone sit on a pad or like even a bumper plate like on the seat to like set themselves up a little bit higher on the back pad. Um, anything else there? Anything else on seat positioning? All right, so essentially our sequence of cues for a quality leg
Well,
press.
hang on, I have
Go
a
ahead.
point to add. I would add like a subcategory here of like breathing mechanics. I think you see a lot of people who are like breathing really deeply, like deep belly breaths. And when you see that and you're like bringing your knees down towards you, like this is when we also see tend to see like loss of like pelvic control. So it's like like leg press is really hard. You're pushing a lot of load, so the tendency can be to breathe like really deeply, and like people aren't really breathing through their diaphragm. They're doing these like really big belly breaths, and so you like combine that with like these knees coming down, and you've got this like pelvis shifting basically. So
Also, I think if you do a belly breath, it also shortens the range of motion.
You're using the powerlifting power belly
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
exactly. Power
I mean,
belly.
the point is like it's really unstable,
Yes.
which is kind of never the play.
In general, I find when you can like watch a training video and you can see the clients, I see oftentimes it's too is like 5 breaths. Like I'll see on a hack squat, for example, like I see you taking like through the descent of this like 5 big belly breaths. I see a ton of movement there. Like we're not very stable through the hips if that's what's going on. Um, okay, anything else in terms of execution? Cool. Okay, so stance, hip to shoulder width. Probably don't want to rotate feet outwards too much. Somewhat individual. Play with it a bit. Probably don't want to go crazy there. Um, Basically, put our feet where we can maintain heel pressure. Control the lowering portion of the rep. Stop before your pelvis starts to round up off the pad. Press back up, and that's your leg press. Use the handles. Anything else that I missed there? All right, so different variations and when we would use them. I think that we've pretty much covered the 45-degree leg press already. That is going to be your standard plate-loaded leg press, your hammer strength leg press. I mean, like the Nebula, I think the Arsenal's 35 degrees as well. And anyways, 35 to 45 degrees is going to be your standard leg press. Squat press, another consistent variation to run into that is pretty great. The squat press will have a little bit different loading profile. The way it is set up, first the foot plate will pivot, which will allow us typically to get a little bit more range of motion. But it will also be one where it's a little bit easier in the lengthen range at the bottom, and we'll get a little bit harder at the top. If you watch the way that pivots, basically the weight gets closer to the pivot point of the machine at the bottom, and then further away. The horizontal distance is less at the bottom, more at the top. It gets harder at the top, basically. I love a squat press for, again, we can get a very good range of motion on it, but also you can just grind reps on it because again, you'll like it since it gets a little bit easier in the length and a little bit harder than short. Like I find people can just really grind on that. And again, our range of motion potential is typically just a bit better. Anything else to add on the squat press? Pin loaded leg press, like a horizontal leg press, is another one that you'll see a lot. This is probably the most common in like your apartment gyms, hotel gyms, etc. Anyone here a fan of the pin loaded leg press or have use cases?
I like it for glute dominant press.
Okay.
It's very difficult to get enough range of motion for a quad bias leg press or even just like a general leg press. But whenever the goal is glutes, usually because of the upright back pad, the way that you're able to press, and then also the fact that usually the sled part is coming downward, so it kind of arcs upward in relation to your body. It's really good for glute dominant or glute focus.
Yeah, I
So
tag on to
Go
that. I like it a lot for like single leg press. Can work really nicely there. I'm gonna shout out my client Richard, who has been dealing with like some arm stuff. He had like PRP done like in his left arm, and so he was not able to like load plates on a leg press. So like that was a pin loaded is a great option there. It's like no one's slinging plates around. So from a setup perspective, I also like for single leg work, like hip presses and things like that. I really like just because it's like I'm already getting ready to do some single leg work. Like last thing I want to do is like load all these like plates. So that's nice. I think I the counterpoint I would add is that it starts from the bottom, and that's like kind of annoying.
It's
But
hard. It's hard to get started on it. You have no elastic energy
yeah,
starting out at the bottom. That's where I
You
use
can
my arms.
also though, sorry, what'd you say? That's
I
where you
said
use
that's
what?
where I use my arms to just get the first rep going out of the
yeah.
Yeah,
bottom.
I'll use like both legs and get it to the top, and then take a
yeah,
leg
Yeah.
away. But like it's still just kind of annoying.
yeah. Cool. Anything else on the horizontal leg press? Hip press, which isn't gonna be a super common one people come across, but you have like your Rogers hip press, your Atlantis hip press. Do you guys have a hip press at your gym, Danny? No, you're mute. Okay, cool. Well, if you have a hip press, kind of similar to the pendulum or the squat press, honestly, a bit more of an arcing pattern. Also going to be like a very, very good glute bias movement. Also, there's a lot of different variations of them, but most of the ones you run into like in a gym will commonly be a little bit similar resistance profile as well, a little bit easier in the length and a little bit harder in the short. So I'd say a lot of similar benefits there. They also work very, very well for same reasons as the horizontal leg press does, and they're typically like more horizontal press. Um, they work quite well for like a single leg press. What about like a single leg press on like a 45-degree leg press? Y'all a fan? Not a fan? What's our take there?
I use it, especially if that's what we have available.
Hmm. What's like the decision making process with that over like a rear foot elevated split squat?
Typically, that's in their program too.
Okay. So just not having to do split squats twice a week is the benefit. I I like a single leg press as well. I'll say I typically bias like obviously we all love a rear foot elevated split squat. Like we were talking about this, Natalie. I run into sometimes like me personally, just like the foot plate will hit my knee, and I like can't put my leg in a position where it won't. In which case, like I've started doing like a B stance. Like I have a single leg press in my program, and I've just been doing a B stance leg press, which I don't mind. Um, is that one y'all program often or no?
A B stance leg press.
Mm-hmm.
I
Because
have
you do one, right? Or you did for a while.
me.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Am I?
Oh.
Maybe I'm not remembering. I don't know. I have. S- there are some clients, who I'm constantly kind of pushing to train harder, push harder, and sometimes they're a little bit more confident with a B stance, especially if it's like the 45-degree like leg press, and it's like this kind of fear of like the sled coming down on them sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that can really help mentally there.
Okay. Okay. Right on. Any other alternatives to the leg press we haven't discussed so far y'all want to cover?
Banded, banded leg
Hmm.
press.
Hmm.
I'm a big,
Do you use
big
that
fan.
often? Okay. Talk us through it.
Oh, just that, just changes the strength curve. Obviously, so it's like harder at the top, but also just helping with that like explosive power. I personally have liked using it in the past because it's a pain in the butt loading all those plates onto the machine, and so just for some variety, but also when, especially I guess for maximal strength, right? It was great for powerlifting. But again, just a strength, just to change that strength curve. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about the banded leg press. I haven't done that in forever. Basically, you're still obviously like loading plates on the leg press, but essentially you will be banding it so that as you press up, the band stretches out, which creates more resistance. So
Correct.
essentially, like with leg press will typically be easier at the top, harder at the bottom. But what it does, it doesn't necessarily make the bottom any harder, but it makes the top more difficult as well. So it's just like more consistent challenge throughout. I forgot about that. That's a blast from the past. I haven't used it in a long time, but that is pretty brutal when I have used it. Um, in terms of sequencing and like where we typically put a leg press in the session, y'all have a preference earlier, later? Is it really just an it depends answer?
depends, but I think if I had to commit, I would say usually a little bit later. It totally depends, and I've done it both ways. But usually a little bit later because the way that we started this podcast out was talking about why we like the leg press. You know, it's like incredibly stable. Like, I know we just nerded out about it for the last hour, but at the end of the day, like, you really just need to get in there and like let her rip and get out. And you know, by the end of someone's session, like they're training hard as they should be. They're probably pretty cooked, and their brain is probably pretty fried too. Um, so it's just like it's one of the quote easier setups to get into and just not overthink.
Yeah, absolutely. Danny, agreed, disagreed?
Yeah, I would agree. I prefer having it towards the end of the workout, just because it takes the like if we think about, you know, I guess mentally how tired you are, like I guess at the end of a leg session, right? Or how much thinking you have to do to think about like anything with a barbell or a dumbbell or anything free weight. So then just being able to, right, I get to sit down on the leg press and just knock them out, right? It takes the least, I guess, concentration relative to the other exercises, and you're safe, right? So you just get to knock it out. So yeah, I prefer it later in the workout typically.
Yeah. Angela, we on the same page there as well?
Yeah, I use it both ways. Because it is so loadable. I do sometimes put it earlier on in the workout. Just sometimes some people will. No, I don't want to say that. You can use it as a very high volume in the real sense of that word movement, and be able to load it up more significantly earlier on in the workout. So it just depends on the person.
Yeah, for sure.
And that also being said, usually I will have one or two movements beforehand that do require a little bit more brain power, or potentially, like, you know, not activate, that's the wrong word, but like work your glutes before you're going into it, for example. Or if quads are a priority, maybe we're doing like a leg section or leg extension beforehand. But then I'll also keep more of the machine based work toward the end, usually, because for the same reason Natalie said, like, we just kind of want to have something you don't have to think too hard about whenever you're already fried at the end.
Yeah, for sure. It's just dependent on the client priorities. Like if it's someone who's really wanting to grow their quads and we have like a really good quad press, cool, that's probably going to be quite early in the session. Whereas like if we're focused on glutes and I have them doing a hinge like an RDL, a lot more skill heavy, I'm probably going to want to make sure I sequence that first. And I'm okay with the leg press being like way later in the session. I might do like an RDL and maybe like a rear foot elevated split squat prior to like our leg press if I really dislike the person, so that just kidding. Again, like less skill heavy, we can still nail it pretty well at the end of the session. So yeah, it's very multifaceted. That is part of why we love it so much. Anything else to talk about before we wrap it up here? Cool. All right. Well, hopefully y'all enjoyed the episode. If you did, do us a huge favor. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. If you would like to work with our team, hit the link to apply in the show notes, and we will catch you guys next time.